Hey everyone, I've been shooting wood arrows since I first got started in archery. There's something about them, they're just romantic, they're really cool, they kind of tie us to the past of archery, and they're a lot of fun to make. So today we're going to be going over how to make your own wood arrows. Now these aren't going to be the super premium competition arrows, they're going to be really functional arrows that you can just go out and have fun with. So here's what you're going to need to get started. Alright, so one of the most important things you're going to need is wood arrow shafts, but they have to match your bow. And so before you buy a dozen of these wood arrow shafts, what I would recommend is that you talk to your local archery shop or the traditional archery supplier that you're using to source your wood arrow shafts from and see if they have a test kit, which will be a variety of different spined arrow shafts or made up arrows that you can test out of your bow to see what shoots the best, and then you can buy the size that you need before you invest in a full dozen, because especially wood arrows are very picky on the spine and how they match your bow. So it's really important to know your arrow shafts have to match your bow. So a dozen shafts when you're ready to order them. And one of the first steps is just making sure your arrows are straight. And an arrow straightening tool like this one, there's a lot of them on the market. You can kind of look around and see which ones you think you would like the best. I've had good luck with this one. We'll show you how to use it later. You're gonna need arrow points and nocks. And so important thing about these is that they need to match the diameter of the arrow shafts you bought. So there are three common arrow shaft diameters for wood arrows: 5/16, 11/32, and 23/64. So most common of those is going to be 11/32, but whatever you choose, the different ones are just going to depend on the spine, and the weight would be the determining factors on which diameter you choose. But whichever one you choose, make sure you buy components that match those arrow shafts. So when you're buying your glue-on points, make sure you buy 11/32 glue-on points to match your 11/32 arrow shaft. And same thing with the nocks. Make sure you buy glue-on nocks that match your arrow shaft. Now to put those onto the arrow, you're going to need a taper tool. What this does is it kind of works like a pencil sharpener. It will taper the point end and the nock end to accept the point in the nock. Now to glue on your point, you're going to want some hot melt glue. And to glue on your fletching and your nock, you want some super glue or fletching glue. Of course, you're going to need some feather fletching. You're going to need a fletching jig for putting on your fletching. And you're going to need some way to seal your wood arrow shafts. There's a lot of different things you can use. Again, when you're buying all your supplies from a local archery shop or an traditional archery retailer, you can look in the wood arrow making supplies. You'll see dip tubes. That's the most consistent way to apply a sealer or a paint to an arrow shaft. And then there's a lot of different chemicals that will seal up wood. You can also use, like, I'm trying out some Danish oil. I've had good success with wipe-on polyurethane. I've also tried it in a spray can. Whatever you do, just want to make sure that you're sealing out moisture so your arrows don't warp down the line. All right, and that's everything you need to build your own wood arrow shafts. So now, let's get into it. I'll show you how it's done. All right, so when you buy arrow shafts, most of them are going to come pretty straight, but you still want to check to make sure you have nice straight arrow shafts. You can do this in a number of ways. One of the easiest ways is to sight down the arrow shaft and look for a bend. Another great way is to lay it on a known flat surface like a granite countertop or a piece of glass. Roll the arrow shaft on there and you're looking for a gap between the surface and the arrow shaft that would show you a bend. Now that we've found an arrow shaft that has a bend in it, we're going to place it on the workbench with that bend facing up, and we're going to roll our arrow straightening tool over the top of that bend to straighten it out. We're going to go through the same process with all of our arrow shafts, and once they're all straight, now we're going to move on to tapering the nock and the point end. You'll notice that this tapering tool works just like an arrow sharpener. It's pretty easy to use. We're going to taper the nock end and the point end, and then we're ready to move on to the next step. And once they're tapered, on to sealing them, again with whatever you've chosen to seal your wood arrow shafts with. Get them sealed against elements, and then you're going to hang them up, let them dry, and do another coat of the sealant, let them dry. If you follow the instructions of whatever you're using, I recommend at least 2 coats of anything. Some of them you're going to need more than 2, maybe 3 coats. So just follow the instructions, let them dry. Some things you're going to want to do a little bit of steel wool in between coats, and then once they're dried up, fully sealed, you're ready to install your point and your nocks. Now that our arrow shafts are completely sealed, we're ready to start assembling an arrow. To do this, we're going to start off installing our nock and our point. Points are really simple. We're going to heat up our hot melt glue, smear some on the nock end, heat up our point, stick it on the taper, and we're going to give it a good spin to make sure we're distributing that glue evenly. We're going to wipe off any excess glue that comes out and let it cool. Moving on to the nock end of our arrow shaft, what we're going to do is we're going to align the nock with the grain of the arrow shaft. We'll show you exactly what I'm talking about right here. It's much easier just to show you than to try to explain it. But this is how you want your nocks to be aligned with the grain of the arrow shaft. And that has to do with how the spine is measured and which side you want facing the riser of your bow. Now our arrow shafts have nocks and points, and they're ready to be turned into arrows by fletching them. So grab your fletching jig and your fletching glue. Put your arrow shaft in the fletching jig. Put a fletch in the clamp of the fletching jig. Run a bead of glue down it. Place the clamp onto the arrow shaft. Let it dry. Turn the knob to the next position and apply the next fletch, and then one more, and then you're done. You have 3 fletchings on your arrow shaft, and now it's an arrow. Just let it dry, and it'll be ready to shoot. All right, and there you have it. You just made some wood arrows. I hope you go out, enjoy shooting them, and we will see you all in the next video.